Thank you very much, Senator Klobuchar, and thank you, Mr. President. I ask to speak for such time as I may consume.
The Senator from California.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, as Senator Klobuchar has stated, I come to the floor to speak on the sex trafficking bill. I know it's now held up by certain language, which I will go into in the details of my remarks. But briefly, I'd like to begin by describing the bill's highlights. The bill clarifies that a person who buys a sex act from a minor or other trafficking victim can be prosecuted under the federal commercial sex trafficking statute. The bill authorizes block grants for state and local governments to develop programs to rescue trafficking victims and investigate and prosecute traffickers. The bill also includes nearly all of the provisions from the Combat Human Trafficking Act, which Senator Portman and I introduced in January. And I'm very grateful to the authors, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Cornyn, for adding these. These provisions establish a minimum period of 5 years of supervised release for a person who conspires to violate the commercial sex trafficking statute. It requires the Justice Department to train on investigating and prosecuting buyers, on seeking restitution, and on connecting victims with health services. It would require reporting on sex trafficking prosecutions. It would expand wiretap authority to cover all human trafficking offenses. And it would expand the rights of crime victims, something that I have been interested in since Senator Kyle and I did the Crime Victims' Bill of Rights. The bill, which is not controversial, should pass, except for the surreptitious inclusion, and I use this word considered, of a provision that's known as the Hyde Amendment. The provision was included by language, was not included by language, but by cross-reference provisions in another previously enacted appropriation bill. Here's what it says. Limitations. Amounts in the fund or otherwise transferred from the fund shall be subject to the limitations on the use or expending of amounts described in sections 506, 507 of Division H of the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2014, Public Law 1113, 76, 128, Statute 409, to the same extent as if amounts in the fund were funds appropriated under Division H of such act. This provision was not included in the bill that Senator Cornyn introduced last Congress, which I co-sponsored. His staff approached my staff and staffs of other senators early in 2015. They asked if I would co-sponsor again. My staff asked if the bill was identical and as last year's bill, and for an explanation of any changes that were made. Senator Cornyn's staff then sent back on email a list of changes, 7 changes in all. That list did not include the Hyde Amendment language that had been added. That language was not mentioned to my staff at any point. In other words, an important and sensitive change was made to the bill, was not disclosed upon request. Now, that does not excuse us for not catching this. But if you see the complicated and sort of obfuscated nature of this, I'm not saying it's intended obfuscation, but all the numbers that are in this, I think it makes it understandable. If the Hyde Amendment, which is what this is, if that language comes out, this bill will pass easily. Now let me address for a moment the enormous problem that we're trying to address with this bill. Today, high demand and easy access fuels a huge amount of sex trafficking. Human trafficking today is the second largest criminal industry in the world. It is only behind illegal drugs. In 2005, human trafficking was a $32 billion criminal enterprise. Today, some 9 years later, it's a $150 billion estimate of illegal gains. And 2/3 of the proceeds from human trafficking come from sex trafficking. Children as young as 12, 13, and 14 can be found on the street or over the internet. It's not exaggeration to say that this is modern-day slavery. These victims are moved against their will to cities throughout the country and even to other countries, wherever demand is high. Trafficking rings are also run by gangs. In San Diego, for example, profits are so great and the risk of being caught so minimal that rival gangs don't fight each other over sex trafficking, as they do when drugs are involved. Some traffickers make as much as $33,000 per week. These are numbers gathered by the Urban Institute, and here they are. Atlanta, gross take per trafficker a week, $32,833. Denver, $31,200. Seattle, $18,000. Miami, $17,741. Dallas, $12,025. Washington, D.C., $11,588. And San Diego, $11,129. This is weekly gross cash intake per individual trafficker. Traffickers lure victims through promises of love and money, or sometimes used an older trafficked girl as a recruiter. These criminals prey on the most vulnerable children in our society, including those that are homeless or in the foster care system. They target children who have been victims of sexual abuse. Once they have a victim under their control, they may traffic him or her from city to city based on demand. For example, this is a slide of California. It's the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force that shows the routes that traffickers take to move victims around the state of California to meet demand. And you can see these circles from Oakland to Sacramento, and then down into the Inland Empire, and then from Los Angeles all the way around into the Inland Empire. So you can actually track various routes. Because Orange County did this, this is the Orange Center here is meant to be for Orange County. This particular task force is comprised of a number of federal and local law enforcement agencies in Orange County, including the Anaheim and Huntington Beach Police Departments, the United States Attorney's Office, the FBI, and the District Attorney's Office. Now, here it comes. Regardless of how children are first trafficked, one thing is almost universal. Victims will be advertised on the internet. By one estimate, 76% of child sex trafficking victims, 76% of them are sold over the internet. My staff and I have spoken with a number of law enforcement officials in California about the internet's role in connecting sellers of underage children with buyers. Nearly every single official we spoke with said the internet is the primary means to connect sellers with buyers. So this is where we next must take decisive steps to stop sex trafficking. Purveyors of these online ads must be held accountable. And Senator Kirk and I have an amendment that will do that. There are at least 19 distinct websites that accept ads relating to trafficking underage boys and girls. And here they are: Backpage.com, Escort Ads XXX, Eurosads, Escorts in College, Asian escort service, escorts in the US, live escort reviews, my provider guide, erotic mugshots, naughty reviews, exports phone list, Rubads, Eros, 3 retro review, I'm not familiar with it, rub maps, aperfected, escort date, and myredbook.com. 19 websites act as purveyors of child sex trafficking in this country. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. This site that I'm going to show you, Backpage.com, allows a purveyor to post an advertisement for an escort or a body rub. In fact, nearly all of these ads are for commercial sex acts. Many of them depict minors. When you view an ad for an escort or a body rub, you will see pictures of young girls, often with few or no clothes on. Now I'm going to show you 2 girls. The first is a missing 17-year-old girl. She is here as a runaway. This is a listing of missing and exploited children, a very legitimate organization which I am fully supportive of. It's entitled Endangered Runaway, and it's information about her, her date of birth, her age, her sex, her race, all of it, and where you can get in touch if you have information. Now let me show you how this is also used. This is the same girl on Backpage. And this essentially says, "Hello, Texas. Are you looking for an unforgettable experience? Look no further. I am 100% great service provider. I am very down-to-earth, warm, sensitive, passionate, and genuinely interested in giving you a great experience." And it goes on and on. This is the same picture of this same girl. And we blocked out the image, and it's shocking. It's just simply shocking that this is going on to the extent it is in our country, right in a ribald way on the internet. Law enforcement officials and anti-trafficking organizations say there are a number of key indicators that allow them to identify ads that are likely for trafficking victims. In this advertisement, we see 3 of those key indicators. First, the title states, "The victim is new to your city." Anti-trafficking organizations say this is code for being underage. You may also see girls in ads described as young, fresh, or new in town to indicate they are underage. Second, we see a victim is listed from outside the area. Here, she is listed as from Miami for a posting that's in the Houston area. And third, the victim also has an out-of-area phone number. Those are 3 indicators of what this ad is, to sell sex with children. Law enforcement and experts confirm this point. The Cook County Sheriff's Office in Illinois found that 100% of women claiming to be massage therapists or platonic escorts on one website, Backpage, were being sold for sex. This is the Cook County Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Office set up so-called dates with 618 girls via Backpage. All 618 agreed to provide sex for money. The Sheriff's Office concluded, and this is a quote, "This presents irrefutable evidence that Backpage is indeed a haven for pimps and sex solicitors who are victimizing women and girls for their own gain. Any notion that Backpage employs a legitimate business model simply does not stand up to the facts, end quote. This is a direct letter from Sheriff Tom Dart, Cook County, Illinois, and I would ask for unanimous consent to place the letter in the record.
Without objection.
A study of ads placed during this year's Super Bowl held in Phoenix concluded that 65% of the ads placed on Backpage's Phoenix website around the weekend of the game had indicators that the ad was for a victim of sex trafficking. 65% of the ads. Simply put, there are internet companies that are profiting and purveying the rape and abuse of children. This must stop. One way we can combat sex trafficking over the internet is to make it a crime for a person, such as the owner of a website, to knowingly advertise a commercial sex act with a person. As I said, Senator Kirk and I have introduced such an amendment. It would create a new offense of knowingly advertising a commercial sex act on the internet. The amendment is identical to a House bill that has 52 co-sponsors and passed that chamber by voice vote. If we come to a point where we are voting on amendments to Senator Cornyn's bill, I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I know that the Senator and I will bring it to the floor, Senator Kirk and I. Last October, 53 attorneys general authored a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee in support of a bill that Senator Kirk and I introduced last June that is similar to the amendment. And here's the list of the AGs, and I would ask that that list be placed in the record at this point.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Attorney Generals wrote, the use, and this is a quote, the use of the adult services sections on websites such as Backpage.com has created virtual brothels where children are brought and sold using euphemistic labels such as escorts. And the quote from the letter to this effect, I don't want anybody to think it's what I'm saying, it's what they are saying. The use of the term, this is a quote, adult services sections on websites such as Backpage.com has created virtual brothels where children are bought and sold using euphemistic labels such as escorts. Put simply, if you have knowledge that an advertisement placed on your website is for commercial sex with a minor, then you should be prosecuted. That's what our amendment would do. I have no doubt that prohibiting this conduct by a website owner is constitutional. As the Supreme Court has held on several occasions, quote, offers to engage in illegal transactions are categorically excluded from First Amendment protection, end quote. In fact, the Supreme Court in 1973 wrote, and I quote, we have no doubt that a newspaper constitutionally could be forbidden to publish a want ad proposing a sale of narcotics or soliciting prostitutes, end quote. This amendment targets illegal conduct, commercial sex with minors, that would not be protected by the First Amendment. It imposes liability on websites who know that their sites are being used to advertise minors for sex. In conclusion, Mr. President, the internet has made this industry what it is, the second largest criminal industry in the world, second only to drugs. And it's up to us to do something about it. One of our duties in this body is to protect the most vulnerable of individuals. That includes children, and this is what this amendment does. Some say other parts of the bill will help stop sex trafficking, and we don't need to touch the internet. That makes no sense to me. 76% of sales of sex trafficking victims begin on the internet. So you can just touch a small part of it. This touches 76% of victims. We cannot allow these websites to continue to operate with impunity. It's time we take a stand, stop these ads, and stop the exploitation of children. So I look forward to Senator Kirk coming to the floor, presenting our amendment, assuming we can get past this block time. This is so much more important than putting the Hyde Amendment, cloaked in difficult language, in this bill when the House bill doesn't contain it. The House understands that it's going to have difficulty passing in this bill. Why isn't that recognized in this House? You take that out, and this bill swims through.
Mr. President, would the senator yield for a question?
I sure will.